Hello everybody, my name's Paul Tace. In this video we are going to be looking at whether you can fly in London and what you need to take in mind. So as before, I'm joined today with Colin Froud. He is a senior instructor at iRed and he's going to shed a bit more light on this. So for me, like when the new laws came out, flying in London was something that would be really exciting. On New Year's Day I wanted to be up there taking videos of the London Tower, but because of all the fireworks going on, I decided against it. And then when I was looking, we've got CTR zones, we've got restricted areas, there's all kind of things going on. How easy is it to fly in London, or is it even something we can do, particularly as a hobbyist?
Yeah, it's a good question. But what you've got to remember is that London is just the same as any other place. It's just that there's a lot more going on. So you've got, higher congestion of people and traffic. Okay, there's some areas where you're not allowed to fly at all. Okay, because there are restricted areas. You've got Romeo 157, 158, and 159. Okay, which are areas that cover Hyde Park, central City of London, and Docklands, Isle of Dogs area. And there's also, if you look recently at sort of drone assist or something like that, I mean, when you look at London, it's like, where can I fly? It's all red. Okay, well, okay, that's not fair because I've got CTAs and CTRs turned on. So let me just turn some of those off a moment. And now if I just zoom in a little bit more, we can see that it's still quite, a big red area. Okay, but you can see Romeo 157, 158, and 159. They're the smaller areas within that. Okay, but this big one around the outside is Romeo 160, but that's only for helicopters. Okay, so it is a restricted area, but it's not for drones, so it shouldn't be on the drone assist app. Romeo 160 should not be there. Okay, and I've spoken to the CAA about this, and they've confirmed that for me. Okay, so this is an error at the moment. And it's the same on the dronesafe.uk website with their map. Okay, the restricted flight zone map. It also shows this same sort of big blob around London where it looks like you can't fly. Okay, it's only for helicopters, and it's to do with clearance. That if a helicopter's engine was to fail, it should be able to land somewhere safe, basically. So that's all of that's to do with. So really, the areas that we're looking at where we can't fly, and I can't switch them off on this, unfortunately, is obviously this circle here, this sort of triangle bit here, and then this bit over here. Okay, so those are the areas where we can't fly without permission.
Well, that's good news. That's opened up a lot more than I was expecting. As I say before, when I was thinking about trying to fly there, I just read it off, too confused. I also noticed there's like a heli route going through there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's shown in yellow on the on here. You can see the helicopter routes coming up through. Okay, so there's a number of those, and the CAA's advice is not to fly within them because helicopters within those areas can come down as low as 300 feet. And obviously, we're limited to 400 feet. If you look on the drone assist app, though, it says you can fly there, but use caution. So again, it's a bit of a grey area, but sensibly, you would just want to stay out of them. But the helicopter routes do tend to follow, okay, the River Thames at the end of the day. So it's a good idea, really, if you are going to fly there, make sure that you have excellent visibility both ways up and down the river. You should hear the helicopters coming anyway, but because it's a helicopter route, the helicopters will be on the move quite quickly, which means you're not going to have a lot of time to be able to get out of the way. And your drone could be flying higher than they are. So that's something else you need to bear in mind. So the CAA's opinion is just don't go into the helicopter routes.
Okay, so you shouldn't do it. It's legal to do it, but you shouldn't. It's not a good idea. Because if I was flying in London, you'd look at the River Thames and think, what a great place to fly. If you're not likely to hit anyone, you've obviously got to be careful with the vehicles and people around. But ultimately, if anything comes out the sky, it's likely to land in the water. So I would gravitate towards that as being a safer area. But then obviously, if you've got the heli route going over there, it's not safe at all in that sense.
No. And actually the River Thames is quite heavily used by all sorts of people, not only for cargo being shipped up and down. You've got passenger ferries, you've got people just going out and rowing up and down. There's all sorts of activities that take place there.
Okay, so again, something that would be worth looking at is obviously if you've got a a sub 250-gram drone, it's going to give you a lot more freedom than one that's 250 grams or more, just for the fact that any drone that's 250 grams or more, you're not going to be able to fly within 50 meters of basically anybody, regardless of your A2 qualifications, and potentially even a GVC to a certain degree, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. With GVC, it's 30 meters for takeoff and landing. And it's always going to be the takeoff and landing that's the restricting factor, if you like, for finding somewhere to fly. Because once you're up in the air, as long as you, like with the GVC, you have to stay 50 meters as a bubble away from uninvolved people and make sure you don't endanger property and obviously respect people's privacy. With the A2 CFC, depending again on what aircraft you're flying, will depend on how far away you need to be, but it's a horizontal distance, so that's very limiting. So by having a sub 250-gram aircraft means that you can, take off without worrying about uninvolved people. You can fly over uninvolved people so long as you're not endangering them. Okay, and that does make it so much easier for flying.
Okay. In your opinion, do you think it is possible to fly a drone above 250 grams safely in London?
Yes, but it does depend on where you want to be flying it to and your reasons behind flying as well.
Okay. No worries.
So yeah, is it a commercial job? Are you just doing it for fun? I mean, there's plenty of places where you can fly within London, okay? But there are obviously other areas where you just can't fly.
Okay. And so I just wanted to just briefly go over the A2CFC and the GVC, just for anybody in case they didn't know.
No, the A2CFC is mainly aimed at people flying smaller, lightweight drones, okay? And you can use it, it's mainly aimed at hobbyists, you're absolutely right. But you can also use it for, earning money from your drone. That's not a problem at all. You just need to make sure you have insurance in place. That's the only difference. With the GVC, it's definitely aimed more at the commercial operator, okay? And that means that you can fly heavier drones more easily.
I'm actually quite surprised. That's given me a lot more freedom than we thought we would have had. So if I wanted to fly down a street in London, as long as it's not in one of those 3 restricted areas, I could literally potentially fly over traffic? Or is that's going borderline into safety there?
Flying over traffic, okay, that's always an interesting one. And again, I've had this conversation with the CAA. So there's 2 scenarios really, okay? Let's just leave London out of this just for the moment. So if you want to fly over a road, okay, if you're in the countryside and it's a quiet rural road, it's not a problem, is it? Just fly over it, okay? What if it's a motorway like the M25? You can fly over that? That could be classed as endangerment now, couldn't it? Because you're causing a distraction to the drivers. So if you're going to fly over a road, just fly over it, okay, and get it done. But I would not be flying personally over anywhere that I'm going to be lingering and potentially causing endangerment. So I would not be flying over a dual carriageway or a motorway. And if I was, okay, maybe I've got a survey to do, where I've got to follow alongside a road or something. I'm going to think carefully about the sort of aircraft that I use. So I might want to use a fixed wing aircraft for that purpose, so that if anything goes wrong, it's got a glide path, so it doesn't land in the road. We can steer it away from the traffic, can't we? So it's those sorts of things. And really, you shouldn't really be following the road anyway. You should be going across it at 90 degrees, okay? And if you had to do a survey of a road, the best way of doing it isn't up and down the road, it's across the road, zigzagging as you go, because you've always got a glide path away from the road. Now, if you go into a congested area and you're talking about flying above the road, then you need to think about lots of different things. Again, endangerment, because that could be a distraction. Okay, we could argue, well, it's a sub 250-gram drone, therefore if anything happens, it's no problem. But it can cause a distraction, which could cause an accident. Okay, and it's in built-up areas. There's lots of cyclists. Okay, and if motorists aren't paying attention, they can easily get knocked off. There's all sorts of things that can happen just by being distracted. Okay, there's an incident a few years ago on the M6 motorway where lots of people unfortunately lost their lives due to a firework display. Okay, and people were rubbernecking the firework display, and unfortunately, they all piled into the back of one another. Now, okay, that's an extreme example, But a drone could equally be a distraction to drivers to the same extent.
Yeah, certainly. You certainly notice a drone, and you know it's something different, and you do look at them. I'm a bit like that with birds of prey. If I see a kite somewhere, I'm like, oh, looks like I'm not
I
going
mean,
to cut that bit out. I've got no feedback on that.
I mean, personally speaking, would I be happy flying a drone in a town centre? Well, no, but then I don't need to. Okay, if I need to get a high angle shot, then we just grab our van with one of the country's tallest masts on it, goes up to 30 meters, stick a camera on top of that, and we can get everything we need to from that. But again, you got to ask yourself, why do you want to be flying in that town? Okay, if it is for a commercial job to look at someone's gutters or chimney pot or something, then that's one thing. But again, you need to then think about when you're going to be flying. So choose a time of day when it's quiet.
Day of the week.
Okay, so generally early in the morning, maybe before rush hour. Okay, when there's less people around. And if people do see you flying as well, I would also let the police know. Okay, and that goes for flying in London full stop. Okay, the CAA say if you're flying in London, or if you're flying anywhere really, the CAA's recommendation is always let the police know what you're doing. Because then you can be eliminated from their inquiries in case someone is being an idiot with their drone.
So does it make any difference if you're a hobbyist flyer or a commercial flyer in regards to letting the police know?
No, the recommendation from the CAA is to let them know, regardless of whether you're flying for fun or flying for work. I mean, for work, most people would anyway. I mean, as a hobby flyer, a lot of the time it's just not practical to do that, is it? Particularly if you're flying at a known location where you've been many times before, and lots of other people fly there as well. So it has to be a pragmatic approach to it. But the recommendation is always to do that, because if there is an incident, then at least you can be eliminated from the inquiries straight away. And that's what it falls back to each and every time.
Okay. And you obviously wouldn't call 999, would you?
No, if you told 999, you'd probably end up in trouble. No, the best number to call is 101, which is for non-emergency use. Okay. Or a lot of police forces also have a website where you can register your intentions of where you're going to be flying. And that's also a very good way of doing stuff.
Okay, so I've sort of come off track a bit now. So if we go back to look at London, would you recommend flying in London at all, or would you advise against it, given a choice? Like, is it something we should do recreationally?
Yeah, there's plenty of places where you actually can fly in London. There's plenty of parks where you can fly. Obviously, you can't fly in Hyde Park, and there may be some others as well where there are bylaws that prevent flying. But there's lots of other open green spaces where you can actually fly. I'd just like to bring up a point, and it's what you said just a moment ago regarding wind and buildings mixing together. Okay, I've been in London. Okay, and on windy days, the wind can hit these buildings, okay, and then force the air down. So it's a real problem for drones, okay? So if you've got a small, lightweight drone that's not fit for flying in strong winds, you could lose it very, very easily. Okay, it could go out of control, basically, because it can't fly against the force of the wind. So it is definitely something that you need to be aware of when flying close to high-rise buildings.
This could be particularly prominent with something 200 and less than 250 grams.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I can guarantee if you do fly your aircraft in a built-up area, someone somewhere is probably going to be calling the police to say there's someone flying a drone, they're invading my privacy.
Absolutely.
Again, another good reason for contacting the police, because they say, no, that's fine, we know about that one. So yeah, always expect the tap on the shoulder when you're flying in a congested area. You always have to be ready for that, really, and that's another good reason for registering with the police. But that aside, there are lots of places where you can actually fly quite legally for recreation in London.
Okay. I noticed that Regent's Park is half in and half out of a restricted area. I've been you just have to take my word for that. I guess you won't know it off by heart. But for example, the very corner of London Zoo is out of the restricted area, whereas most of it is in. So there's the potential there just to go and fly in the park overlooking the zoo without being over it.
Right, you need to be careful when you're doing something like this, because you can, although legally, in theory, you could do it. Okay, someone could say, well, that's harassment. Okay, I'm now being harassed because this drone is flying where I don't want it to be flying.
Get over there, penguins.
It could cause endangerment to penguins, lions, tigers, and obviously the general public who have gone there to go and have a family day out. And that's the same for a lot of National Trust properties as well. Okay, so although legally you could take off from land outside of someone's, like National Trust property, so take off from a field outside of the National Trust and fly over the National Trust property, there is risk of endangerment and harassment to the people that have gone there for peace and quiet, okay, just to go and enjoy the countryside. And that is what you will be done for, okay? So if you do ever get caught, okay, that's what they will prosecute you on, is the harassment side of things.
Okay. That sounds like another video for me, harassment now. I haven't heard this. It's come up in the past 2 videos I've done with you. So it'll be good to have a bit more clarification on that, but maybe for another one. Potentially looking to the future, we're going to do a video about this with Colin coming out soon, looking at C1 and C2 drones. Although it's not relevant now, I imagine a C1 and even potentially a C2 drone would be possible to fly in London with less restrictions.
Yeah, that's right. So the C1 drone, you're right, you can unintentionally fly over people. And I believe that the aircraft can be as heavy as 900 grams. The unintentional bit is really for when the drone is in follow me mode. Okay, that's really what they're thinking about here. So if you're on your mountain bike going down a mountain and you've got your drone following you behind, okay, it's for that unintentional flight over people. If you're flying in a congested area, you're generally going to end up, well, okay, you don't want to fly over people, but you're going to end up flying over people anyway. Even if you hovered your drone, people are going to be walking up and down and you're going to be over people anyway, you know. So that's invariably going to happen. But you're right, it can't be a preordained overflight of people. Okay, you have to try and avoid people.
So you want a less populated area, and if somebody walked past, that's sort of out of your control. You've taken a reasonable amount of risk assessment there, and they've just come in, and if they pass through, there's no real trouble.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so but ideally you should have your, you know, keep your situational awareness up so you're fully aware of who's walking around. Okay. Now, with the other drones, the C2 drones, these are for drones up to or just less than 4 kilograms. Okay, and you're right that in the slow mode, takeoff and landing distance from uninvolved people and operating distance is actually 5 meters. Okay, but it's horizontal distance.
Yeah.
So that's going to take into account any pavement and roads that might be there in a congested area, which probably means that a C2 drone is very little use in a congested area. Because you just won't be able to have 5 meters of clear space. Because remember, it's people in vehicles as well as people outside of vehicles.
Okay, so in summary, what I've taken away from this is ideally, if you want to fly in London, you're going to want to do it with a drone that's 250 grams or less, maybe a C1 drone, but although you'd be better off with a lighter drone. You want to be flying basically somewhere where there's less people around, sort of a park. You don't really want to be flying over any like commercial areas with like busy traffic or anywhere even populated. But as long as we stay outside of those restricted zones and bear in mind people's privacy, there is no reason we can't do that.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that, Paul, is the fact that, you know, we always have to be mindful of Article 241 from CAP 393, which is to do with endangerment of persons or property. Yeah. Okay. And arguably a sub 250 gram drone, yeah, it's going to hurt if it hits you. Of course, it's going to hurt, but it's unlikely to do major damage. But it is, again, you just need to use your common sense and risk assess it in your head, okay, and make sure that you don't endanger any person or property, okay. And you know, and that's just a case of basically staying away from people at a comfortable distance.
Okay. I feel I've got to put this to the test now. Yeah, so maybe that's another video. I don't know how I feel about it still. I say I would love to fly in London, but it's again, it's something that you think you've really got to want to do and have good reason to do, in my opinion. Although I say it may be worth looking into. Okay, thanks for your time, Colin. That's it for this video, and I hope to see you all in the next one.